one thing just up front, we had a third person who was going to be on the panel. Trevor's dad is in the hospital in Arizona, so he flew down this weekend to go be with his dad. So your prayers for Trevor, prayers for his family. Sad he's not here with us, but I think I will try and play the role of Trevor a little bit from in terms of what our lunch was like. He had some valuable insights that I think we do want to make sure get shared. But first of all, congrats to both of you. Thank you for being here. You saw a lot of hands go up in terms of people who are trying to build right now, right? So I think what you're doing and where you're at and your insight is super relevant to everybody who's building something. Because, let's start a little bit about your backstory. Like, why was this the thing that you wanted to build for both of you? And maybe a little bit prior to building, where did you come from? What made you who you are? Why do you feel compelled to be an entrepreneur? Does that make sense? Can we do that? Maybe we'll go Emily, then John.
Yeah, sure. Hopefully this is working good for you guys. So I'm Emily. I'm the CEO and co-founder over at Paiv. We're an AI go-to-market platform for the trades. And I guess to answer your question, my whole life I had been hustling, I guess. So like when I was a kid, I worked at like a snowboard shop in Troutdale, Oregon. So like we were like the truck stop before the gorge. There wasn't really anything over there. And I was like, well, I could make a lot more money teaching saxophone lessons and working at this snowboard shop. And I'm obsessed with music, so I'm just going to do that. And I started making like $30 an hour or $25 an hour instead of like the $6, $7 an hour I was making at the snowboard shop. And that's kind of what started it for me. And ever since, I just got kind of addicted to doing things that stretched myself and felt like bigger or better than what I was, I guess. And I got addicted to that feeling. So
love that feeling. Good feeling. John.
Yeah, I remember in college, I did a venture capital internship, and my only learning from that was that the entrepreneurs seemed to be having a lot more fun than we were having. No offense to all of our venture capital friends that are here today. But I just I felt like I wanted to be in the game that the entrepreneurs were getting to play in, and I was just kind of a coach or a fan or watching it. And so I started a little baseball company in college, and that little company is still going today. And I just got a taste for what it was like to build and sell something. And then went and worked at bigger companies and got to learn from more experienced operators, and then realized it was the right time to go back and start my own thing. And so started working on Leland. What will be 4 years next week, we launched. And so very excited to talk more about it.
Super cool. So maybe a little bit like, let's talk about how you formed the company, like why, talk about, we have a couple co-founders in the audience, like talk about like how you found your co-founders. Because if you're in Sandbox or just went through Sandbox, raise your hand. Okay, so we got a few people who are in the early stages, like just forming the teams. Can you kind of talk through like, how did you find the squad?
Yeah, for sure. So when we had the idea, it was initially Gamify. So we had a company called Gamify, and we eventually transitioned to Paiv as you know it today. And when we first started, I was over at like a retailer of ADT for a short time. Who in here has done like door-to-door or has like been in home services? Raise your hand. Yeah, like Utah's a special place because a lot of you raised your hand. And so at the time, we realized that there was just a high need for the software we were building. And I actually called up one of my best friends in the whole world, and he's my dad. And he was over at AWS at the time. And I was like, hey, like I'm noticing these big problems. I think we can do something about it. It's changed my life. I went from kind of like losing the first business that I ever started during the pandemic and making enough money to get a down payment for the house I live in today at that job. And we wanted to solve the problems that I was facing at work. And so, we got started. And I think the unique thing, obviously, not everyone's going to start a company with their family member, and some people would even advise against it. In my case, we had such a good bond, and we both were just so, like, people would describe my dad as, like, too obsessed with the things he gets obsessed with, right? Like, it's too much. And I'm the same way. And so us together was just like a storm of, I think, a good founding relationship.
Cool.
I love it. So when I decided to start Leland, I had been doing a little side project in the space and thought about it as this little side business. And it started to get a little bit more momentum than it probably should have. And so I remember where I was I was going to school at Stanford, and I was in my dorm, and I had this like moment where I realized I got to do this, and I'm not an expert in most things, but in this one little area, like I have some unique experiences that might make this possible. And from there, I just started to make steps in progress. And I think that involved recruiting. I recruited 2 engineers that I had worked with at LinkedIn to help me build it in their nights and weekends. They were still working at LinkedIn. COVID actually really helped with getting people to moonlight. So I had 2 engineers from LinkedIn and a friend from Facebook, and they helped me kind of build the MVP, and we scraped by. And I had a friend from Stanford kind of helping me in the early days. And then I called Erica, and she started to help. And it was just kind of like grabbing anyone that I could get. And then over time, I started to see who my real co-founders were amongst that group. And Erica was one of them, and Zando, who's our CTO today.
Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Because I think it's so important to say who are my real co-founders. And I also would definitely advise, like, don't just say, hey, we're going to be co-founders immediately.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's work on this together. And you can maybe can you maybe like parse that out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the messy story is that I had a co-founder from Stanford who had all the things on paper, who seemed he would be amazing. And we hired Erica on, and she was reporting to him. And then like within 2 weeks, it was like she was his boss. It was like, what are you doing? Erica's like doing everything. And so pretty quickly it was like, okay, well, this is probably not going to work. And I, could have made a lot of better decisions in how we set it up. Thankfully, it was before his vest date and all the things that we had set up, so it wasn't any sort of long-term issue. It was just kind of a pain in the beginning. And Erica was just doing everything that this guy was supposed to be doing. And so I was like, Erica, you're my co-founder now. And Zando, who we had convinced to join as our technical co-founder, who had told us no. And I was like, no, you can't say no to me. You need to do this. And thankfully, he reconsidered. And 2 weeks later, he called us and said he was joining. And so, I think it's a really good point to not just say, hey, we should be co-founders, and then like now we're married for the next 20 years. I think there was probably things I could have done to say, hey, well, why don't we do a project together, and then let's evaluate in 2 months and see how is it going, because I probably within 2 months would have been able to tell, and I had worked with this guy a little bit, not as much. I should have, I think we all kind of have this like wishful thinking, like it's gonna work out, like everyone's gonna step up, it's gonna be great. And I felt trapped to that, and then I was really glad that could kind of unwind it a little bit and had great people that could fill it.
Yeah, that's definitely like one of my early thoughts for everybody who's about to go through Sandbox or currently starting to build, is like, make sure you have some outs. Like, you guys can go work together, but for your vest, 12, at least 12 months, 1 year before anybody vests anything, like just good base operational.
Yeah, and the bar for like what a co-founder is different, right? Like you can get a lot of really good people. You should be recruiting lots of great people, advisors, supporters, thought partners. But like if you're gonna drive at that level, you need to be a killer.
Fair. Okay. I also want to make, this one's like a Q&A type session. So if anybody wants to raise their hand, feel free to jump in, because we have some like general topics we want to go into, but really this is for you. This is like the down and dirty, gritty session, right? Like this is not just storytelling one. This is like, here's the reality of like what building looks like. So let's go past like finding the co-founders, and let's talk about finding early product market fit. And when do you feel like, okay, we have something? When's the first like big like aha moment? I don't have to go get a day job. Like, when does that moment happen?
Yeah, I think I've actually thought about this a lot, because we've pivoted over time, right? And so I think when you're selling something that on the first call, you start to explain it, and maybe it's not even quite built yet, and the person on the other side's like, give it to me. Like, give it to me now. And you're like, oh, well, I don't know if you're even gonna know what to do with this yet. Like, hold on, like, let's talk about this a little bit. Let's make sure the use case fits. And they're like, no, I know what to do. Give it to me. And then you start talking about pricing, and you start talking about value, and you say like, well, what is this worth to you? And you start talking through ROI. And in our case, like, we're going through a phase right now where we're gonna compete with digital marketing spend for some of the people we talk to. So those budgets are like way larger than their software spend. So we're trying to figure out like, okay, so like what part do we actually fit into? Are we competing with your software budget or your digital marketing spend? And you start to find that like, if you have product market fit, people are going to say, give it to me, and they're going to be willing to spend quite a bit of money on something that might not even be sexy yet. That's my opinion.
Love it.
Yeah, we talk about. I mean, you obviously think about this all the time, and there are certainly shades or elements to product market fit that are not always super clear. Of course, like when people are pulling it out of your hand, this is really strong signals. We joked that we had one of our employees broke up with his girlfriend, and then she spent $5,000 on Leland 2 weeks later, and we're like, that's product market fit. Like, there's no reason for her to want to buy this anymore. We also had to let an employee go, and he came back and spent money on Leland like 2 years later. And so I think, we always joke about some of that stuff, but I think it comes down to desperation, like you solving a problem that is real desperation. Like people do not have any other way to solve it, and they feel desperate to solve that. I think the part of product market fit that's harder, and I think that messes with a lot of people, is the distribution side of product market fit. And because a lot of you have probably built great products that you kind of feel that your customer tells you they really want that, and then the question is like, great, how do I get like 10 million people that look exactly like you to find out about us? And I think that's the hard part that doesn't get talked about a lot. And of course, you get word of mouth, and you get like a lot of the things that go along with product market fit that help you with distribution. But the repeatable engine is part of product market fit that I think comes a little bit harder than just building a great initial product.
Anybody have a question here before we go on to the next item? Everybody good? Don't be scared to ask a question. I'll call on someone. Rachel, what do you think about product market fit?
Well, something I'm thinking as you two talk, Emily, your pivots, right? And what is it like when you think you have product market fit, or to John's point, like product channel fit, and then it changes? And how do you think about that kind of pivot?
Just so everybody can hear, how do you think about pivoting when you think you have something, but then some big distribution channel goes away? What do you do then when what was working is just blown up in smoke? Like, is that fair kind of summarization?
I like the pivot in some way.
Yeah, so it's actually similar to what John was just saying. So you like get into a groove, and maybe you think you found it, and maybe you even hit $1 million in ARR. Like we've done that, and we've been wrong. And so,
how many times have you gotten to $1 million and then gone back down?
I don't know if I want to share that, but it's been more than once.
It's been more than once, right? Like you think you got it, some market dynamic changes, and you go back down.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's not unheard of.
Yeah.
It's not just up and to the right.
It's not just up and to the right. And I think, when you start digging in and you actually have something like the day one, you're not counting CAC or CAC payback. We were just talking about this. Day one, you're doing experiments. And then you dig in and you're like, dang, like CAC payback's terrible in this market. Or, you start looking at your metrics, and your metrics like do really, really matter a lot. And they'll tell you the health of your business. And so if you're looking and you're seeing like, okay, in this segment, I have super low ACV, they buy seasonally, and my CAC is astronomical, I'm never gonna.
Can I just say, like, for my kids, your customer acquisition cost is CAC.
Yeah.
So how much does it cost for you to get a customer? If your marketing costs you $10 and you're only getting $3, probably wasn't a good customer if you had to pay 10 and they're only worth 3.
Exactly.
Right. So like those metrics were probably way off at some point. You're like, I don't want more of that customer.
Exactly. And and you're looking at net revenue retention, and it's not just like when I first started, I didn't know what those things were. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I did not even care. I was like, I'm solving a problem, I'm gonna go out and solve this problem. And then when I started looking at these things of like, I actually have to scale this business, there were things that were fundamentally wrong. And those are kind of, some of them are lead indicators, some of them are lag. But you realize some point along the way that like things just aren't going to scale to be the massive business that you want to build.
Yeah. So go ahead, James.
I just had a loaded question for Emily, because I know some of the history, but when you start a business, quite often you go chase customers and you try to make your products work for anybody. In your experience, I know that you had a period where you realized you had a bunch of customers you maybe didn't want to keep servicing because they were really high touch, high maintenance. Can you talk to the group about that? Like, what was your realization and what did you end up doing?
Yeah, so yes, I'm like thinking through the whole thing. So we did realize along the way that there were certain segments that weren't working as well for us. And you have to do a bunch of tests. And I think the best advice I've ever gotten, and it's not mine, I hear it all the time, it's fail fast. So if you can figure that stuff out quicker, then you can make the pivots faster too. So For us, we ended up finding that roofing, just as an example, was a great market for us. And we doubled down on that. Well, we had to back away from some of the customers that kind of fit the description that I was saying, like really didn't help the business grow over time in the way that we wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, anything you want to add to that in terms of like high touch customers? Like you're dealing with people who are trying to get into Stanford, or I would think they'd be pretty demanding individuals. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think for us, we have, there's definitely been times where you say this customer is not worth servicing. I think for us, there's, I might argue in some cases that some people try to get everything figured out on the scale front before they even find what people are desperate for. And so in many cases, we've actually taken the opposite approach, which is we're going to be more heavy-handed. We're going to sort of fake the marketplace. And this is true, I think, especially for people that are building marketplaces. Like if I was talking to some students the other day that are building a really cool like NIL marketplace. And I think one way to approach that product would be, all right, we need to build the product that's like so smooth, and you have your athletes on one side and you have your brands on the other side, and you build this beautiful product where they can browse the different athletes and they can book and they can schedule. And the other approach would be go build a Squarespace website that says we help you get connected to the best athletes out there and feature like the 3 athletes you have, but tell them you have a lot more, and then put a little sign that says schedule a call with our team and we'll get you a custom project. You get on the phone, you say, hey, yeah, we have access to all these different athletes. Which athletes seem the most interesting to you? Which sports? And then go get those athletes and say, hey, do you want to make some money? And then all of a sudden you have a marketplace. And so like that takes you like 10 minutes. And we did that. That's what we did. And so I would highly suggest doing things that don't, obviously do things that don't scale, but like really do that and understand like, because you can just learn so much. So then when you go build the platform, you're informed on what people actually want rather than investing so much time and energy into a product that might be like just off and you have to re-architect once you launch and it doesn't work.
Totally. Want to transition a little bit now to like how you think about, it's not just you anymore. You got a team of 12. We're going to say around 40 for you. Trevor is 125, and I'll beat Trevor in this like conversation. But like when you think about what keeps you up at night, or what are your priorities as you're at but also talk a little bit about who you're hiring and what personas are you looking for, and what makes the team that you're excited about going to battle with. Does that make sense? Like, we'll just kind of hit that one for a second.
Yeah, sure. So for us, we're actually trying to stay pretty lean as a team, and that's part of our strategy. So our goal is to get to 5 million of ARR with like less than 15 people. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You want to make sure that what you're doing is actually going to scale. So by the time you do put fuel on the fire and you go raise a Series A like John did, you want to make sure that what you're doing actually works really freaking well. And I think a lot of companies will hire a lot of people as they get close to that 5 million mark. And when they get funding, they're like funding something that's pretty inefficient. And so for us, we're looking for people that are good at lots of things. So we're hiring more generalists, whereas I think maybe later in our journey, we would hire some more specialists. But at this point, we're hiring generalists. And I just think that right now is the perfect time to build a company with very few people and hit major milestones. And I think you guys have probably all read that this is happening. So what keeps me up at night is actually speed. So like how fast can we execute? How fast can we build value? How fast can we grow our revenue? All of those things like definitely keep me up at night.
Yeah, we went from this time last year, we had around 10 or 12 people, and yeah, now we're at 30 to 40, somewhere in there, full-time and contractor. Everything broke when we doubled the team and then tripled the team. All of our meetings and everything, like I'd show up and there's just like 12 people in a meeting. I'm like, what are we even doing? Like we need to change all of this because there's just too much overlap and too much inefficiency. And so I think part of it is a big focus for me is making sure that every single person we have hired knows how to row in the same direction and making sure that they feel like when you have 10 people, you onboard someone and they're like, why is no one doing that? It's like, well, because we don't have enough people. So like you can just go and run at it and you don't feel nervous about that because no one's doing it. You join with 30, 35, 40 people and someone like might be touching it and all of a sudden you're a little nervous. Like, should I jump in? Should I let them do it? What if I break something? And so part of it is like helping all of our new hires know that I am going to be infinitely more upset if they sit on the sideline and kind of wait and learn and ramp and I'm going to be way happier if they accidentally, take the site down or email every one of our customers a test email or whatever. Like, I actually don't care if you do that if it's in the pursuit of getting ramped up quickly. So I think teaching people that there's, making mistakes is normal. It's okay. Owning that mistake is great. Like, we're not going to come down on you. And making sure that everyone is innovating in each of their areas, because I obviously, in our leadership team, we don't have the time to be in the front lines, in the weeds as much with each person. So each person kind of needs to be innovating in their own respective place.
Yeah, perfect. And then we can all be Trevor here for a second, but what I remember was like at 125 people, he's gone from generalists to now some specialists, where they're just now starting to hire for people who own each individual niche of the company. And I think from his perspective, the thing that I would add is like, he now doesn't know everyone. And like, he has to trust that his lieutenants are all building the right teams and all going the right way. But I also think, that's kind of like twisting here is how AI is changing the productivity of what each person can do. Can you talk a little about like how you said you're going to stay under 15 and get to 5? I'm assuming that's because you're building in workflows where a human isn't doing all aspects of the delivery to the customer. Can you talk how you think about that?
Yeah, and I know everybody's saying this on LinkedIn. Like, there's totally things that are realistic and things that are just like BS. Like, there's some things that are just not happening that people are saying are happening and they're not. But what I've noticed for us is, sure, like, we're using Cursor and that's making people go faster. But I think we even talked about it doesn't work that great with large code bases initially. People have found ways to make that work really well. That's great. And tell me if I'm wrong, like tell me the way, because Cursor's been great to speed us up, but it hasn't like replaced any developers for us. Like, it's just made us go faster. And so what's actually helping the most is going in and looking at our product and saying, how can we use AI to increase speed to value? I think that's number one. Like, how do we make onboarding faster? How do we get customers loving the product in less than 5 minutes? And really just kind of almost making like, and I don't know if this is good advice. I'm like seed stage, so you might not want to take my advice yet. But the way that I'm looking at it is, how do you make like a sales-led motion feel like PLG? And so when you get in there, you're onboarding without really talking to anyone at Paiv. You're finding love for the product without talking to Paiv, but we're there. And anyway, that's what we're trying to figure out right now. And I think that's how AI is helping us probably the most, rather than like replacing individual roles.
Yeah, it's more augmenting than replacing.
For now, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the realizations I've had in the last year is that, to hammer everything looks like a nail. And for a minute, it was like, oh, we need help with this. Let's go hire for it, because we now can. And we've raised our Series A, and we have budget to kind of build the team, and we need to be more aggressive. And the same thing is true on the AI front, where we've now said, great, like we have hired a lot of people. We'll continue to hire great folks. We're not going to triple the team again in the next couple of months. So now I need to train everyone. And thankfully we have Amelia and Nate, who are both on my team. They organized like an AI learning session every other Friday or whatever, where the team can go and like dive into new tools and then present on what they're learning. We've done all hands and other things to get people to kind of share their learnings and best practices, because it is new. Everyone's kind of figuring out what it is, what it means for them in their specific role. But that's the new to hammer everything's a nail. Like, I need our team to say, oh, I have this problem. Instead of I need to go hire for it, I need to, like, what are the tools available to me to actually go and solve this problem? And so that's been the next kind of shift is, all right, like, we do have capacity to bring on great people. We will always do that. But if we can unlock those people, obviously we're going to be so much more effective, even when we bring on the next wave of 5 or 10.
And playing Trevor here for a second, I think the part that he would add is at the scale they're at, they're really saying, like, how do we not hire 50 more people? How do we take the 125 that we have right now and remove some of the doing of the role that can be kind of the brainless stuff, and like augment people so their work streams are more customer facing, more orchestrating instead, and less doing. I think that might be my thought for the group, is like, how can you hire orchestrators and let less doers? Like, I feel like that is the prioritization from a people standpoint. The head of research at OpenAI said this, and I thought it was super relevant. What has been soft skills, what have been like the interpersonal skills, are going to become the hard skills, because the soft skills are just going to be like the differentiator between the 10% that make us all human. This base part of knowledge is going to be AI's role more than it has been in the past. And that was, I think Trevor kind of aligned with that kind of way of thinking about it.
Can I add one thing to that? Yeah, I think in a world where, that execution of, let's say, writing code is so fast, then judgment matters so much, right?
Critical thinking.
Because all of a sudden, like, our job is obviously to move fast, but it's to move fast in the right direction. And oftentimes, there's this like movement without progress. We talk about that a lot as a team. Like, we don't just want to be busy. We want to be like moving in the right direction and making actual progress. And the nice thing about AI is that it's like shortening the time from idea to execution. So you just better make sure that the ideas are good, right? And you need to figure out how do you create a filtering mechanism and a prioritization framework in your organizations so that when people do have great ideas, you don't just end up with a bunch of slop and random things happening because everyone can do it faster. And look, I built this shiny new tool. Like, it needs to be, you need to figure out how you're going to actually screen for that and then execute on it well.
And I mean, I really think that's the CEO role, is like steering the ship and making sure that everybody's going that right way. Because you're right, you can run 100 experiments and get to faster, but if it's going down the wrong path than was for. I think this is something we kind of talked about at lunch, and maybe we can kind of hit on this a little more. Like, how do you think about the bets that you're making right now? Like, how are you thinking about what's strategically important, knowing that you can move so quickly or that you're prioritizing speed? Like, how do you know you're going the right way? Or what advice would you have for that?
Yeah, I think at our stage it's probably a little bit different because I don't have time to wait for the metrics to show up. So I just told you like what caused a pivot, and that's the scary part. Is like by the time I see those metrics, it's too late. And so I am spending a ton of time talking to my customers. My entire team's talking to our customers. We're trying to measure their outcomes. So I think the old way of doing things was like, okay, how much time can we save people? But I think the future is like, no, how much value do we actually build for this business? How much more revenue did they bring in? How did their close rates increase? And you don't always have that data available inside of your tool. So you actually have to go and talk to your customers. And sometimes, like for me in the home services, they don't know, they don't always know. And so you have to dig really hard. And then you have to look at user engagement metrics. Like, we're obsessively looking at our user engagement and trying to figure out like what other signals, based off of this conversation we just had, what other signals do we need to track so that we aren't waiting for those lag metrics to come through down the road.
Yeah, one of the things that we're debating a lot is how customer driven we should be versus vision driven. And generally, I think I align more in the camp of being customer driven. And what I mean by that is, you're listening to the customer to kind of tell you what they need, and obviously not listen to them in terms of the products you're necessarily building, but obviously the problems you're trying to solve. The challenge with that, and I think we're running into this now, is that can also lead to kind of local maximum optimization, where you're going down a path that you're sort of optimizing a customer experience that would be valuable for that customer, but may not be the broader vision that you're trying to achieve as a company. So I think it is really important as leaders to figure out, maybe generally what is our vision, and then let's be really zoomed in on what the customer is asking for, because a vision that doesn't align to what the customer wants doesn't really matter. But then how are you also making sure that you're following like the sequence of, all right, if we build this, and like where does this take us from a market standpoint, from a product standpoint, and is that actually where we want to go? Because we've made a couple of, I think, strategic changes lately that maybe small pivots in terms of investment areas based on not actually following exactly what the customer wants us to do, because we see an opportunity to be bigger.
Yeah, so it's like customer informed and maybe a little customer guided, but also not losing sight of your North Star in terms of how do I bring in the 1,000 people instead of like the 10 that I've spoken with. Like, so I think as a founder, you have to make sure that you're thinking holistically and that you know the space well enough. Yeah. And you're obviously going to have a broader horizon than 1 or 2 or 3 of your customers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What questions do you all have here? I'm going to pause. Yeah, Cynthia.
I have a question for Emily.
Yeah.
So as a founder and CEO of an up-and-coming company, and unfortunately we don't have as many women in this room as I would like to see, but I would like you to see if you can help business owners or business leaders, women, in this market, and how have you navigated the intricacies of having a young and female business owner, and how are you keeping that seat on the table intact?
Sorry, can everybody hear that real fast? Yeah, maybe I'll just repeat the question. Young female founder, how are you handling the challenges associated with that situation?
Honestly, like, it's such a hard one. Like, I've felt at times like being female or being a woman is hard in this line of work, but I actually think, and I don't want to say anything negative about myself in front of all these people, but
You can be human. We're all
I think
human.
there's
It's okay.
worse things. Like, I didn't go to Stanford. Like, I didn't. I studied music in college. I didn't work for Divi and go through the Bill.com acquisition. I didn't have some of those experiences, and so. And my age, like there's just like a lot of things that come together. I work with my dad. People have weird thoughts about that. Like, oh, did he give you this opportunity? Like, hell no. Like, we work together. Like, this has been hell, And this is not, I think, the journey, if we looked back, either of us would have thought it would be. But I think being a woman probably makes it harder. And the only reason I think that is because I don't feel like there's a lot of people that have. There's people who built public companies for sure, but in tech, the people that I look up to are men a lot of the time. Like, I don't know if that's bad to admit, but like I look up to a lot of men, and so I'm like, well, how does this sound coming out of my mouth? Like, how do I say this in a way that's me, when the people that I look up to and that I study are kind of dicks? You know what I mean? Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out and navigate right now.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think that just one part that I would add to that real fast, after like speaking with quite a few female founders within Sandbox and externally, is they get told to act a certain way to be aggressive or be this or that, and I think the balance there is you have to be also authentically yourself. As much as you want to portray a certain characteristic that you think is required, the best way is to be you. And I think as long as you are you, then you know who you are, you can fill people around you who cover the gaps that make a great team. And I think that's true for male or female founders. But given what you're asking, I think that would be the one to add on, I'd say there. Yeah, Brandon.
2 questions for you guys. You talked about your growing team size. You guys are trying to stay under 15, I believe. Leland's at 40-ish employees now. Where did you go to find the A+ talent and hire for slope versus just where somebody's experience already was? And then, especially for the early hires, where did you go finding those?
Yeah, so let me repeat it. Where do you go to find the best people, trying to find people with great slope? And then secondly, the early hires, where did you find them? Fair?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. The short answer is Sandbox. Like we have hired, I think, of our 10 out of school hires, I think like 8 of them came from Sandbox. So
Say the line that you say around them.
oh yeah, we joke that all of our Sandbox hires were raised in darkness, because starting a company is so freaking hard that they go and try to start a company for a year and they pound their head against the pavement and they just know the pain, and then you give them a chance to work on a code base that millions of users touch, and they actually have customers, and they're like, this is so cool, this is awesome. Versus we've hired some amazing consultants too, but to consultants it's kind of the reverse problem, which everything is easier, and then you get here and it's like, is this actually supposed to be this hard? It's like, yeah, this is just kind of how it is. But I do think, there is something to that, which is people that have done hard things and are not afraid of doing hard things, like that sign up voluntarily for the challenge. Like we have our product manager, signed up for like ultra marathons and all these things for no other reason than he just likes pain or likes to challenge yourself. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are just in it to see what they're made of. I just want to see can we pull this off, and there's something exciting about that challenge. So I think we look at a lot of that. We look at we look like great people know other great people often and congregate around communities and groups, and so we tap references and referrals all the time. There's obviously downsides to that, but I think for us, like if we're trying to get great people, they hang out with each other. I think when we're testing for it, like we hired a lot of people that I think are unproven, and I think try to give them interview processes that give them a chance to shine, and don't necessarily have anything to do with their background or any sort of fancy thing. And that might get them in the door, but there's other ways to get in the door too.
Just the part I'd add here, I was a part of a hiring committee for an out-of-college program at a big company for a few years. And the number one indicator of success that I found, now 10 years removed from being a part of that like group, was, and the number one question I asked is like, what's the hardest thing you've done? What have you overcome? And that shows what he's trying to get at, is like who goes after hard? Who wants to be a part of doing something hard, something meaningful? If you're just here for a paycheck, there's a lot of easier ways to do that doing it at a startup, right? So I think that would be like, for you, Brandon, you're starting building your team, like who's up for hard?
Yeah, I also think, sorry, I'll
you're
shut up
good.
and say, I think when I'm interviewing people, I'm trying to get at their DNA more than anything. Like I want to know how they think, how they operate. And so all of my questions are geared around just like understanding the person. Because for the most part, if you have the DNA or it's not just the DNA, I guess it's the habits, the way of being, you can learn a lot of the other skills, at least in our business. That's the way. There's obviously certain roles like technical roles where you need more of the skills, but I think in many cases it's the DNA that matters.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. We're finding the same thing. Sandbox has been a good place for us to hire. So really great.
But not all great. Not everybody's great out there, right? Like
It's true. So we've hired multiple people from Sandbox. So I'll start by saying that, and they're some of our best hires. So like the people that are the best that I've realized is they built something meaningful while they were in Sandbox. And we interviewed some people that didn't get as far with their products, and like that's fine. It was just kind of like I didn't understand the work ethic from the experience that they had had. So if I were to give advice, so not that you're asking, but if I were to give advice to people applying, I would say when you're in Sandbox or when you're in your internship or whatever it is, like give it your all and don't think about what it's going to mean for your career or whatever. Just do it. Work hard.
Be present.
Be present. Don't play startup because we can tell. By the way, like we can tell you're just playing startup. We can just tell you're quoting that really famous guy on LinkedIn or whatever. Like we can tell. And so for us, we're measuring. I think you said slope, Brandon. And so yeah, we're measuring slope. We're looking for what did they achieve that just feels like it should have been impossible for them, and how did they do it, and how are they going to do that again?
Thank you. Maybe just last thoughts. You're welcome to come up and ask questions after, but maybe like just last thoughts for people who are trying to build, young people who are here who are like, what are the things that you would go back to 18-year-old John or Emily and say to yourself about like what the ride's going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's super hard. I know everybody says that. Okay, a couple things that I've been seeing. Careful chasing capital too soon. And I know that's so annoying to hear because you want it so bad. And you'll do anything. You'll do anything to get that capital. And like, I totally get it. But you don't need it. And if you think you need it, then you got to ask yourself, like, what are you doing wrong? Like, if you're pre-seed and one of your co-founders needs the money or whatever it is, that's a problem. That's a red flag. Like, I would be looking at that really closely. And I'm kind of gearing my thoughts towards Sandbox, by the way. So if you're like later on in your career, you need cash, it might be a little bit different. I don't know. But I feel like you don't even know, this is something I've been thinking about lately, is when you first start a company, you're solving a problem. And you're talking to the people that I talked about, like people that are saying, give it to me.
But sorry, real fast. The problem is not your salary or your living expenses.
Yeah,
it's your customer's problem. The problem is not I need to raise money so I can live.
Exactly.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Yeah. So when you're solving these problems, just realize that you don't know necessarily how big that market is. And that's what's going to determine if you're venture backable or not. And if you don't understand your market, you should not be raising. That's my personal opinion. And until you know that you're actually venture backable and that you have large enough ACVs for a large enough market, you should not go raise capital. And I see a lot of people going out to raise because they solved a problem for a customer. And I think if I could go back in time, I would be telling myself like, hey, like don't put so much pressure on yourself to raise. Just focus on solving problems for your customer, and then you'll prove the market size later.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think I was.
Maybe maybe let's go to you just personal, John. Like 18-year-old John. Like what do you want 18-year-old John to know about that journey?
Yeah, I think we think a lot about risk, and everyone always asks, like, how did you decide to take the risk? And I think that the risk of a boring life is also significant, right? And so I would evaluate risks in all of the risks in your life, not just financial risk or the risk of an opportunity cost in your career. And that is a privileged opportunity, and not everyone maybe has that opportunity. I had friends that were in school that were going to need to go back to the country that they are from and provide for their family, and they're like, I got to get a job at McKinsey because I need to go and pay for my family, and that is totally acceptable. And if you happen to be in a position where you probably are going to be able to pay your mortgage, then I would think about risk a little bit differently. I would swing harder. I would try something that's going to challenge you, and I would do it with great people, and don't get stuck in the kind of the cycle of being nervous to take a risk, because I think that many of the things that appeared to be a risk on the surface actually ended up blessing my life and challenging me in unique ways that I never would have had I not been willing to kind of jump off the cliff. So I'm happy to talk any of you off the cliff if you want to talk after.
That's awesome. And maybe final shout out to Trevor. One of the things that we've talked about is in everyone's life you get to choose your hard. Do you want the hard of doing something relevant, or do you want the hard of having regret at 80? You get to choose that hard. And every day, and this is Eric Albus from chess.com now, every day you are making that choice. You are choosing your hard every day. Are you choosing a hard of growth and personal stress and personal risk and personal development? Or are you choosing the hard of laziness and eventual regret? And I think that's the story of everyone's life. You get to make that choice.
Yeah, and by the way, choosing hard or choosing a risk doesn't mean you have to go and start your own thing and do be the hero. Like I was just talking to a friend who joined one of the hottest companies in Utah, and I'm like so stoked because that's going to be a unique challenge that's going to challenge him in really awesome ways. And so I think it's just a matter of challenging yourself.
And just this session started from the conversation I had with Tyler Hogue about exceptional startups. And I wanted to do this because exceptional startups, he would posit to all of you, if you don't have an idea, you should go find a company to join that is an exceptional startup. Because those are the places where you get the most growth and the most development. So anyway, can we give it up to Emily and John for being here with us today?